Hello and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got another episode today from the Know Your Foe series. This time we're looking at focusing on how to deal with the latest Black Templar Codex supplement using our Necrons. Now before getting into today's video, I wanted to bring your attention to a product sold by the Sigmarite Boutique, which are an Etsy store, and they've got Warhammer 40k single player trackers and the 9th edition ready. As you can see from the photo, I've already got mine, but you can virtually get this in any colour, any faction logo on the top of it. You can get this for yourself, or maybe you can want to get it for one of your friends, maybe as a Christmas present and whatnot. Now there's a few things that I really like about this tracker, is the fact that it's 9th edition ready. So as you can see from the primary objective section, which is the top right section of the tracker, there's 4 lines for the primary objectives, because of course you can't score primary objectives on the first battle round. You've got the actual battle rounds on the left, you've got all the secondary objectives, all 3 of those, and the command points at the bottom, and the little tracking devices, which as you can see in the photo again, mine are orange. If you nudge the tracker, they don't just simply move out of place. It's very strong, very stable, and it's a great device for playing your games. So you'll find the link in the description for the Sigmarite Boutique, which will take you to an Etsy store. They're based in Canada, but they do ship worldwide, so check them out. That's the Sigmarite Boutique. Links in the description. Now back to the video. These guys are quite interesting as a Marine chapter, and I've actually been swayed to start collecting the Black Templars instead of the Blood Angels. Thankfully I haven't actually painted any of the red on my Blood Angels yet, so it's an easy fix to do. So what we're going to be doing in this video today, first off we're going to be looking at all the Black Templar stuff, the ability, the datasheet, unique rules and all that kind of stuff. Then for the second part of the video we're going to be talking about the Necron side of things, talking about strategy and how to beat the Black Templars as best we can. So let's begin the video with the basic abilities that you're going to come up against when going against the Black Templar. So first of all we've got the part that we already kind of knew, which is the chapter tactic, which is the easy part of the video. They've got the Righteous Zeal chapter tactic, so they get to reroll their advance and charge rolls, and each time a model with the tactic loses a wound as a result of a mortal wound on a 5+, that wound will not be lost. So nice and straightforward there. But now to the more newer stuff. Now they've no longer got a super doctrine, and this has been replaced with a very flexible ability called Templar vows. So if every unit in the army has the Black Templars keyword, and they've all got command doctrines, then they're all going to gain the Templar vows ability. So Templar vows come into effect at the end of the read mission briefing step, so pre-battle, and they can select from one of 4 options, and that's of course after seeing your Necron list. They're going to be able to select that. So it's very important, that point there. They're going to get to see your list, see the mission as well, and then they're going to get to select their Templar vows. So each vow is an army-wide buff, but it also comes with a negative trait. So let's check out the 4. So the first one is suffer not the unclean to live. So while this vow is in effect, models that make a melee attack against non-vehicle units, any unmodified hit rolls of a 6 would automatically wound the models. And as for the negative trait, which is called a passion, each time the unit is selected to charge, the closest enemy non-aircraft unit that's within 12 inches is not in engagement range of any Black Templar units must be the target of the declared charge. So they've got to go to the nearest enemy models that are not in an actual fight. So this one's going to be extremely powerful, especially on Crusaders, as they're going to be coming in units of 20 and have a heap of attacks, as you're going to see later in the video. And it won't matter what strength they are, they're actually strength 4, and even if it's going against our toughness 5, for example, with our destroyers, it's not going to matter too much because it's going to go straight through on 6s. Thankfully this doesn't work on our vehicles, otherwise that quantum shield 4+ the wound thing would instantly get bypassed. Now the passion, which is the negative trait, means they must charge the nearest enemy model, so we could definitely use that to our advantage and force them at the more throwaway units such as Scarab Swarms or even Catan Shards, because they only lose 3 wounds per phase. Now the second one is uphold the honour of the Emperor. So while this vow is in effect, models army wide are going to have a 5+ invulnerable save, massive. Furthermore, each time an attack is made against a unit, an unmodified wound roll of a 1 or a 2 will always fail irrespective of any abilities the weapon will have. So they've got a mini transhuman physiology going off there. Then the passion, which is simply they're not going to gain the benefits of cover for any attack. So that's the benefits of light cover as well as dense cover. So this is probably one of my favourite options here as far as my Marine half goes. Now the 5+ army wide invuln is mega. Remember they've already got a 5+ full no pain save against mortal wounds with the chapter tactics, and now add a 5+ invulnerable save as well. Now there's a lot of Marine units that will be magic with an invuln save. Think about an ever powerful Redemptor Dreadnought or ATV Invader bikes, attack bikes, even basic troops. Whereas Necrons need to pay for a Chronomancer just to do this on a single unit, whereas these guys have it army wide. Insert sad face here. And then to further take the cake, that mini army wide transhuman physiology is in there too. You can't wound them on an unmodified wound roll of a 2, so our high strength weapons that are looking to double down on their toughness isn't going to work. Not that we put our strength 10 stuff into infantry, right? Now this vow actually gets more sickening when you bring out a chaplain, and again we'll discuss that later in the video, but one of the litanies in particular is a 5+ feel no pain against all wounds as opposed to just mortal wounds, so they could effectively have a 5+ invulnerable save and a 5+ feel no pain save against all wounds. Gross. The third one thankfully doesn't have any effect on us Necron players because we've got no psychers, but I'll display it on the screen for you just for your other factions that you may play, so just give the video a pause to check this one out. Then on to the fourth one, accept any challenge no matter the odds. So while this vow is in effect, while the unit's in engagement range of any enemy units, if a combat doctrine is active for your army, then the unit gains the bonus of the assault doctrine instead of the combat doctrine that's active. So that's battle rounds 1 and 2 in particular, where they're going to get an extra bit of AP, because very likely on turn 3 they're going to turn it into the assault doctrine anyway. Then furthermore, each time the unit attacks, until the fight is resolved, they're going to add 1 to the attack's characteristics of all models within the unit, but this however won't be stacking with the shock assault ability, so it's more for the second round of combat onwards, but they're still going to be getting extra attacks there. And then as for the passion, they simply can't fall back. So overall for this vow, a simple bit of AP for melee weapons and pistols, probably not the strongest option here, but it does have its uses. I don't see Black Templars going for this one if I'm honest, and that passion which doesn't allow them to fall back is quite minor in the grand scheme of things. These guys are looking to sweep the units clean off the board. So that's the 4 vows. There's not much you can do as they select this pre-game, and that 5+ invulnerable save is something they can easily fall back on. Maybe certain weapons and certain units that ignore invuln saves are an option here, for example the reliable Nightbringer perhaps, as it cuts out any feel no pain issues, as well as the invuln save if you're using the better profile, and then you've also got the Catan powers as well there on top of that. Now Black Templars also have upgrades, which is the 9th edition model now for customizing generic units, and theirs is aptly named the Relic Bearers. So their army will require a chaplain in order to unlock them, which is an auto include if you're playing Black Templars anyway. So what's quite different about these options is they're going to be going on infantry and biker units, so it's not going to be character units that a lot of factions have. Now with the Necrons we've only got the Cryptex that can actually take the upgrades, which kind of sucks, but these guys have all infantry and all biker units. So I just wanted to mention a couple of these that are going to really stand out. The first one is the Sigismund Seal. At the start of the first battle round, select one enemy unit that's on the battlefield, then until the end of the battle, each time a melee attack is made by this model's unit against that enemy unit, you can reroll all the hit rolls and all the wound rolls. So this one's going to be really useful for them if the Necron player's got a large 20-man warrior blob, as they're an obvious target, or it could be on a bigger target such as the Silent King. So you've got to watch out for that one. Another one is the Holy Orb. The Necrons aren't the only ones that have the orbs here, they've also got an orb as well. Once per battle in the shooting phase, you select one enemy unit that's within 6 inches and visible. You roll a d6, on a 2+, the unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. That's a little bit so-so, but the next bullet point is where it comes to life. Until the end of the turn, that unit is not eligible to fight until all eligible units from your army have done so. So this one you just got to be really careful if you go in melee with your Necrons, because a lot of your unit will be gone before you even get to strike if you're striking last. Another one I wanted to mention is the Icon of the Hindman. Each time an attack is made with -1 or -2 AP and it's allocated to the models, it all of a sudden becomes no AP. And with the Reapers in particular, because they're -2 AP, but it's also applying to the Gorse Blasters from the Tomb Blades or the Immortals, that -2 AP isn't going to be doing anything, which is the main reason you take them over the Tesla weapons, and units such as Warriors are giving up the range for the AP, although you will have Strength 5 at least. Then the last one of note here is Bones of Mordred. Each time an attack is made with a melee attack, unmodified wound rolls of a 6 will inflict a mortal wound on the target in addition to the normal damage. So again, that's going to really work on a 20-man Crusader unit with tons of attacks, so be aware of that one. So now we've mentioned the rules and the tricks. There's of course a lot more combinations when you start to include the relics and the traits, but let's start talking about the actual units that are unique to the Black Templar players. Firstly, we've got High Marshal Helbrecht, who's the Chapter Master, who's actually a little bit of a beast. Now we've recently done a review video of Helbrecht, so you'll find that in our playlists if you wanted to do a bit more of a deep dive on his actual datasheet and synergies. Now he's got 8 wounds and he's gained the Primaris keyword this edition, so he's going to have some extra synergies with transports and stratagems. He can have 16 attacks coming from this model if he wished. Now we need to be using his one-handed profile to get that many attacks, but they're going to be at strength 6, hitting on 2s and likely re-rolling 1s as he's a Chapter Master. Then he's also got his two-handed weapon. On the charge he's going to be doing 7 attacks, and then 2 more attacks are going to be coming from his little minions, although they will only be strength 3. He then carries a unique weapon which is effectively a melter and a bolt rifle, all in one, but the melter does d6 plus 2 damage regardless of the distance it fires from. He's got the standard 4+ Iron Halo save, but his best trick is the Crusade of the Wrath Aura. So while Black Templar core units are within 6 inches of the model, they're going to +1 to their strength characteristics. So whether he's flanked by Crusaders, or whether it's Blade Guard veterans, or whatever the melee unit is, they're going to get that +1 to their strength, which can be brutal. And you've also got to bear in mind all the faction rules we spoke about earlier too. Now as for the name Chaplain, there's Chaplain Grimaldus. He comes in a mini unit with 3 servitors, which effectively add 3 wounds to the unit in the form of 3 different models. So they can all eat a large amount of multiple damage dice. Each one of them carries a relic that gives the chaplain an ability. So I've displayed the 3 abilities on the screen for you now. Now he is denying the witch as if he was a psyker, and furthermore he's got an ability similar to our resurrection protocol stratagem, where on a 4+ he's going to be getting straight back up. But of course this isn't a stratagem, this is just a built-in ability. And he'll be standing up with 3 wounds remaining. That'll be on a 4+ of course. Now he's also got his litanies, and we've yet to speak about any of the litanies today, so they've got their own set of litanies which are pretty good. Now I'll briefly mention one of them earlier, which is the Litany of Divine Protection. So core or character units within 6 inches of the priest will have a 5+ feel no pain save. So this is massive on a larger unit or even a Redemptor Dreadnought, again who could already have a 5+ invulnerable save if they took the correct vow as mentioned earlier. Now speaking of vows, there's a litany to change up the vows for a single core unit or character unit for a turn, so a solid bit of flexibility there. Now all the other litanies simply give more attacks or dish out mortal wounds due to the fact they're quite heavily melee based, so there's a scary amount of damage that they can be racking up with the right combinations. Now next I wanted to talk about Crusaders. They're a little bit badass now because they can now be Primaris Crusaders, so they can still come into units of up to 20 and they can be kitted out like Intercessors or Assault Intercessors depending on how you want to go. Now when you kit them out for melee, a full unit of these guys can have a combined total of 6 attacks, and that's going to be 80 attacks on the charge with Shock Assault. Now we've already spoken a lot about how you can buff their strength and getting the buffs from the vows and whatnot, but there's loads of stratagems on top of that to add. Basically if they kitted them out with chainsaws, you don't want to go anywhere near them, and their objective secured as well, don't forget that. Now these guys can actually take shotguns or bolt carbines. Now at first glance you're going to be wondering why would you take a shotgun on the unit, as the bolt carbines are also free of charge, they got the exact same stats, just better range. And it's simply due to a stratagem which is only 1 command point, and you can effectively turn the shotgun damage from damage 1 to damage 2. So that's going to be a lot of shots coming from a Crusader unit, which makes the unit very multifunctional, especially when they've got 20 models at 2 wounds apiece, objective secured, that's no joke. So let's move away from some of the unique units and we're going to be talking about some options that a character can field. Now in terms of Warlord traits, some of the stronger options for our Necrons to deal with, one of them being Master of Arms. So it's another one of those fight first mechanics, and also they get an extra attack as well. So against our melee Necrons, the fight first mechanic is really going to sting. Now it can be nullified with one of our fight first rules, such as taking the Saltec Relic, which is the Vanquisher's Mask, or you can take the Nihilak Warlord trait, which is Precognitive Strike. Again, it's a fight first or fight last kind of ability. Now also watch out for the Oathkeeper. So the Warlord can actually heroically intervene 6 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically, as opposed to the standard 3 inches horizontally, so just watch out for that one. Now in terms of some relics, they've got some gems in there as well. They've got all the kind of standard Space Marine stuff with the Adamantium Mantle, digital weapons and all that standard stuff, but there are a few bonus Black Templar themed weapons too. But one that really caught my eye is the Tannhauser's Bones. Now each time an attack is allocated to the bearer, the damage characteristics of the attack is changed to 1. Now this one for me is disgusting. Even if you throw an arrow of Infinity Relic or an Annihilation Beam from the Silent King's Menhirs, you're dropping that damage 6 right down to damage 1. So if I was playing Black Templars, which hopefully I will be in the near future, that's one of the relics I really want to be using. Now the final thing I wanted to talk about before we jump into the Necron side of the video is the stratagems of note. Starting us off with the Tenacious Assault for 1 command point. When an enemy infantry or beast model is in engagement range of Black Templar units, we're not going to be able to fall back on a 4+. So this is really going to sting if you're paying 75 points for a Royal Warden. All they need is a 4+ to prevent that fallback. However, a Veil of Darkness relic will work just fine, although that is a one-use thing. Another one is Strength of Conviction for 1 command point. Done in the command phase for a core unit, and they're effectively just going to get objectives secured. So it doesn't matter that they're not troops, they could be Blade Guard veterans for example, they're going to be gaining objectives secured for a battle round. So this can really catch you off guard, especially if you're relying on your Immortals or your Warriors to hold, or if you're playing with the Nihilak Dynasty or Eternal Conquerors from the custom codes. Usually you're going to be holding objectives, no sweat, but every now and then this will surprise you and you're going to drop some points. Then the last one of note here is the Emperor's Will for 1 command point. Done in their shooting phase on a Black Templar infantry unit, they can effectively advance and still fire pistols, rapid fire weapons and assault weapons, all while advancing, and there also won't be any -1 to hit penalty when firing those assault weapons as well. So this doesn't look massive at first, but it drastically speeds up a melee chapter, especially when it's used on a larger unit. In fact, there is one more I wanted to mention, which is the Vicious Riposte for 1 command point. When a Black Templar core unit dies in the fight phase, on a roll of a 5+, they're going to be throwing back 1 mortal wounds to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds that phase. So again, you've got to be careful if you're going slaughtering a large Crusader unit. You might find your own models taking up to 6 mortal wounds in return. So let's talk Necrons. That's why we're here, right? We now know what the Templars are all about. We know their strengths, which are of course getting into a fight. Now this doesn't mean to say they can't shoot. Now I'd fully expect Redemptor Dreadnoughts, attack bites, ATV bites, Centurions, aggressors, even firstborn stuff like Devastators. Now they've all got a potential army-wide invuln save with the vows ability. This is opening the door to a lot of units to come back into the competitive scene again. But for the bulk of the army, they should be playing towards a forward-thinking smash and grab type list, which is in a weird sense actually better for us because past factions that we've covered on the channel, they've been very unpredictable. For example, Sisters of Battle, Drukhari, even the Orcs nowadays. They can go either way on the tabletop, so it is a slight relief to know that the basic game plan for the Black Templars, which is just they're going to get in your face in melee, is just very tough to deal with, which is our new problem. So we also know that they're not going to have any librarians, which doesn't really affect us too greatly. However, it does actually strengthen our list, because if you've taken a Catan Shard for example, they can only lose 3 wounds per phase, and if you've instantly shut down the psychic phase because they don't have any librarians, that only really leaves the shooting phase and the fight phase in terms of the common methods of dealing damage. So I'd always be tempted to lean on the Catan Shards for this kind of occasion. Now I sound like a bit of a broken record with these videos, but I'd always go with the Nightbringer as the option I'd select. With his strength 14 weapon, as well as the drain life ability, the Black Templar units have virtually no saves, and you could even opt to use the strength 7 profile, but it's only 1 damage, so I'd probably stick to the bigger profile to be removing models there. Now Void Dragons also can be quite useful, especially if they're taking Redemptor Dreadnoughts with the invuln saves, but I can't see them going too vehicle heavy overall. Potentially there'll be some transports at a stretch with repulsors for the bigger games. Now the Deceiver just lost its way at the moment, hasn't it? Redeploying isn't that huge right now for me and doesn't warrant 350 point expenditure. Now the smaller Transcendent Catan Shards could be worth a look. Now I generally don't play them too often, but I do hear a lot of good things. So as for your overall game plans, this is going to be easier said than done. Now the reason why this is so difficult is the objective markers. Now in old editions in the past, units could leave their post and drop back and gain more time for shooting against the melee faction, as the points were only scored at the end of the game. Now in 9th edition this doesn't quite work like that, not for your primary objectives anyway, and you need to be scoring and also capturing objectives on the go. And the Black Templar tactics perfectly coincide with the game mechanic at present. So you've got 2 choices really. Choice number 1, you go for the long range shooty lists. Then you're going to be screening them off to the absolute maximum. You can throw Scarab after Scarab to the oncoming Templar melee units, let them waste turns dealing with the Scarabs that are ultimately just 45 points. Don't charge in with the Scarabs, just let them charge you, otherwise they're going to be attacking your Scarabs on your own turn. Now with the rule of 3, you can only get 3 units of Scarabs when you're talking about match play, so maxing the units out could work, but you've seen in the unit section of this video, they chew through units like butter, so it may not matter whether they've got 9 or whether they've got 3 Scarabs in that unit. Now Wraiths and Lich Guards with the shields could be a more expensive method of trying to shield off the gun line with their invuln saves, because of course Wraiths have got the Wraith form ability and the Lich Guard have got the dispersion shields. Now choice number 1 does have a part B to this, so you could also opt for some deep strike units that get into their back lines. This will attempt to pull back those rushing Black Templars. Now we don't have much in terms of deep strike options. Now the Affinity Destroyers, flayed ones. In fact the flayed ones are being reduced in terms of the money cost for the models, which is quite a nice little thing for us because we're going to start using them for secondary objectives. Now you could also be using the Nephric code. Isn't a code that I prefer to use, but they've got the Translocation Crypt stratagem for 1 command point, which effectively gives deep strike to non-vehicle and monster units. So you could be popping in on their backlines, forcing them to go one way or another. There's also strategic reserves which potentially could come into play as well. Now of course you've got the Veil of Darkness option, which could be used to bait a unit towards them and then zip up somewhere else on the battlefield, which is kind of situational I guess, but you do have that up your sleeve. But the shooting method will require a lot of elite killing weapons, both types of Locust Destroyers and all the big stuff like your Doomsday Ark, your Doomstalkers. And yes, also mass small arms fire is going to be working as well, but I'd rather go for Immortals as opposed to Warriors on this occasion, because Warriors just aren't going to have the range. They're going to get caught in a combat within a turn or 2 if they're firing. Now Tomb Blades are a solid shout because they've got the speed and they can fly, so they can always keep quite well away. Try to keep them out of line of sight of their range side of the Templar army though, because they're going to get targeted by things like, again, Redemptor Dreadnoughts, because of their speed, a lot of the melee options aren't going to be able to catch them. Now as for choice number 2, it's the more riskier of the two. It's not my preferred option, but if you're going melee, then you're going to have to attempt to go toe to toe with the Black Templar. Now if you're doing this, then you're going to really want fast melee units. It's an absolute must that you fight first. Now it's not a guarantee due to their stratagems that we spoke about, but your Scorpet Destroyers alongside a Chronomancer for the in-run save and the reroll to the charge roll. Don't be afraid to bring a Plasma Sight for the extra attacks. Wraiths are quick and they've got damage 2 weapons, they're a solid shout. Lich Guard I'd only use with the Veil of Darkness Relic. Now we spoke a little bit about how to use the Veil of Darkness Relic effectively in the Necrons Relics rating video we did recently, so you'll find that in the playlist if you haven't seen that one. And then the last one to note is the Praetorians. I don't speak about these guys enough, but they're another quick melee unit and they've got damage 2 weapons. Now basically you just need damage 2 in melee, otherwise you need to play out in numbers, which we kind of don't have in melee if I'm honest. We don't have the numbers, so you've really got to go for the correct damage, which in this case is damage 2. Now as far as secondaries go, from our codex, Purge the Vermin is useful. It spreads the Templars nice and thin, making them stick units in each table quarter. Now I'd probably not want to have anything relating to objectives such as ancient machineries, as they're going to chuck you off objectives with absolute ease. Now Retrieve Octerius Data is always a solid shout and doesn't require a specific location to do it, but I probably would prefer Deploy Teleporter Homers. It's very easy to achieve with a deep strike unit, again flayed ones, Hexmark Destroyers, and again it also drags the Templar models back, unless of course they've got the Redemptors sitting there. But take a unit of flayed ones alongside a Hexmark so they can't be targeted with a character keyword. Now there's other ways of defending the model, of course, doing the actions. All in all, I keep them as far away as you can, shoot down their numbers to enable units to be confident enough to stay on an objective. The Black Templars are going to be very durable, and with all those types of saves, they're going to be really difficult to remove, but the main threat really is the amount of attacks they possess. Guys, that's it for our Know Your Foe breakdown for the Black Templar. Let me and everybody else know if there's any combos that I may have missed. I definitely haven't covered the entire book, so drop them in the comments below. Also drop a like while you're down there and sub if you are new. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time.